Good morning and welcome back to This Week in Wikis. This is episode number 2 for the week ending in on the 1st of February 2026. Okay, yes, I realize Sunday's the first day of the week, but it's the last day of the weekend. So we're going to call it the end of the week. But if you are new here, this is my attempt at kind of doing like a bit of a review slash editorial kind of a thing where I look at the articles that I've been reading and actually give, well, hopefully a little bit more thoughts on what I think about what I've read, what kind of things have been going. Um, uh, you know, basically I try to read the articles straight, and so this I want to actually be able to give some more thoughts on what I've read. So let's see. Let me stall for just a second because I'm actually a little bit late, started about 10 minutes late. I do apologize for that. Most of you are probably watching this on the replay, so you don't really notice anyways. But I was in the middle of recording a video that's coming out this week, and so I basically didn't tell anyone I was doing this. So let's give me one sec. Let's see. I know. Super exciting. Leaving it with dead air. I'm such a professional at this. That's okay. One day I'll figure out what I'm doing. But um anyways, it's been an interesting week. There've been some fun articles, some things that I wasn't necessarily planning on. Some interesting developments as far as like articles that I'm looking at coming up. I will admit I have not been as good at um doing current events videos. I'm struggling with that a bit lately. I want to read more. I really do, but there's a lot of stuff that is just, for lack of a better way to put it, it's really negative. Um and it For lack of a better way to put it, it's a bit of um it's a bit of a downer, and it's stuff that I don't necessarily want to attract some of the hate that comes from either side. So I have been struggling because, at least for me, I mean, some of the big things that are going on in the articles, or at least that are going on, is things like, what's happening in Minnesota, which there are tragedies all over the place. And right now, I don't I don't think it's the time to necessarily fan the flames on either side. So I'm intentionally skipping those articles, or those topics, I guess I should say. I am looking at like, I'm more interested, like the stuff that I've done in the past, like when Maduro was captured, uh, you know, getting some background information there. Those articles I thought were a bit more, I'm going to say, neutral. The article about Greenland, about the Insurrection Act, things like that, things that are a bit more general knowledge that I think everybody on all sides could appreciate. So, anyways, needless to say, I have been struggling at doing current events videos. I need to do more. So I do apologize if you've enjoyed those. But obviously, do me a favor, drop a comment down below. If there are current event topics that you want me to read the articles on, drop it in the comments, and I will get it on there. Like I said, right now it's mostly been personal concerns, and so that's why I haven't done it. But if it's something that you want to see, let me know and we can find that information. Another thing that somebody brought up is possibly using Grokpedia, which is based on the X.com AI system. I honestly, right now, I don't even know how to use it. I mean, obviously, you can go to X and you can use Grok, and I think they've got their own separate app. But I haven't looked into Grokpedia at all. So I will be honest. For right now, I don't know. I don't know 100% how to find that. So, anyways, I have to do some more research. If you want me to try a few articles coming from there instead, again, let me know down in the comments. I'm happy to try that out if you think that is worth it. I think I mentioned this last week, but I'll go ahead and I'll repeat it here. Some people have asked why I'm using Wikipedia. They are concerned about the any potential bias or concern coming from Wikipedia. And honestly, I understand that. And I realize that it can be there. But as I have been reading the articles, I mean, right now, I think, okay, so far I have recorded 157 regular videos plus 15 current events videos. Okay, so I'm coming up on almost 200 different videos. My personal opinion on the articles that I've read is that they're generally pretty decent. I think they are reasonably well sourced. I mean, a lot of the articles that I get, especially because of the size, and we're talking about like 400 footnotes. So clearly these are coming from well-sourced information. There can be bias in the writing, but honestly, I would like you to find me any sort of writing that isn't biased, because I don't think it exists. So overall, I think it's actually done pretty well. They generally will present, um, most sides of an issue. They will present things that can be controversial that maybe people don't want to talk about. I know for me, I cover for me it's been fun because I've added in some articles that are uh related to me personally because I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and so I like finding historical topics that relate to that. um and the articles that I read can be critical at times, and I actually appreciate that, because I don't want articles that are just constant fluff and like, oh, here's only the good things about this particular subject, but actually will address problems and controversies and things that people need to be aware of. So far it's like I have been pretty happy with how the articles come out. I realize it's not perfect, but for this particular project, I think it works just fine and I have absolutely no issues using it. So for now, this is where I'm going to continue to using them from. Like I said, if people would like me to try articles um, from Grokpedia or other sources, please let me know. I'm happy to take a look at it. Let's see. Another thing that came up this week was so like right now on weekends, I do two pieces of fictional wikis. I draw for Battletech articles from Sarna.net, which is a giant wiki based on the BattleTech tabletop game. I have been a fan of BattleTech for near on 40 years now. Not entirely, but pretty darn close. And that wiki is amazing. It has a lot of really, really good articles. And so I've had a lot of fun with that one. That's why I do that. It's got some personal background. I get to have some fun, and weekends I intentionally do some, I intentionally do the fiction articles just because I'd rather lighten things up for the weekend. For Sundays, I pull from lexicanum.com for Warhammer 40,000. Again, that is, Warhammer 40,000 is a giant tabletop or multimedia property at this point. But I've been involved with it for most of the last 30 years. And lexicanum.com has a really, really good wiki for 40K topics as well. So that's why I've been reading those, and it's been a lot of fun. But I have had people ask about other topics. Now, there are, to be honest with you, so I do struggle because lexicanum.com and sarna.net are their own websites. They run they're independently operated, and they're actually run really, really well. Most fan type wikis, though, unfortunately, usually tend to be like what's the word I want to use? They're usually based on like the fandom open source software. And I don't like them. They're usually incomplete, or like Shadowrun. Shadowrun's another game that I really like, and Shadowrun, a lot of it seems like if they put a book in there, they kind of just like copy the back of the book, and that's about it. And so I've been really, really disappointed with a lot of others. So I haven't directly looked into those. Well, let me rephrase that. I have looked into others, but I haven't found one I'm necessarily happy with. I have considered Star Wars. I've considered, which is Wikipedia. And then I've also considered Star Trek, looking at Memory Alpha. If you'd like to see, some videos come from there, let me know. I'm happy to look into it. Maybe we could add in a second video on Saturdays and Sundays, looking at those. I don't know. Let me know. I definitely want to get audience input if there's others that work. If there are other wikis that you are aware of, like I'm a huge fan of Batman. I haven't found a good Batman wiki, but if you know of one, let me know. I would be interested in checking it out. Trying to think of other, if there's a good comic book wiki like Marvel or DC Comics. I just said Batman, but obviously we could broaden it out. Or say, like, I couldn't find a good one for Dungeons and Dragons. Sorry, I'm looking at all of my gaming books over here. But yeah, there, like, if you know of something, drop it in the comments. Let me know what to look for. And I'm happy to go check it out. And if it's something that there's a decent audience interest in, I'm happy to go check that out and add some of those into the rotation. Honestly, the whole point of the channel is to have some fun and to explore some of these different topics. Honestly, like I've just had fun, learning new things and reading new things. It is kind of interesting. Sometimes I get kind of in just like a reading zone. And so I'm not necessarily reading for comprehension. I'm just reading for reading. So that's a bit of a mix, but overall it's it's still pretty good, and I am still picking up some interesting things. But regardless, it has been fun. It has been a bit of work. Especially with a lot of the articles taking, you know, 30 minutes to an hour or more to read. Um, this can be like this is requires a decent amount of time. So, so I am trying to work on things to make sure that I'm ahead of the game. I'm trying to make sure that I get videos recorded. I realize that the thumbnail will say "read on." That's technically the day that a video goes live. Um, but um, those are usually like articles that are going to be a little more static. So there's not going to be a whole lot of change from the time that I record versus the time that it goes live. That's also one reason that I separated out current events videos. So you'll be able to tell those by the different thumbnails, because the regular thumbnails are like a red and blue kind of a frame. The current events are like a blue and green. That way you can know automatically, oh, there's a difference between these articles, because the current events ones, they can absolutely change, or it is going to be related to something happening in the news right now. So maybe the article doesn't change, but maybe what's happening in the news can change dramatically. I've also, actually, speaking of changing up the thumbnails, uh, starting with the video that went live today for it was the planet Necromunda in Warhammer 40,000. Um, I've added a different frame to the fictional videos. So BattleTech and Warhammer are going to have a different frame from the videos Monday through Friday, or for the current events videos. So just a few changes, things just to, hopefully it plays a little bit better into the algorithm, and makes it a little bit easier. So if there's particular videos that you like, definitely, you'll be able to identify them on site and, hopefully click through a little better. Just a thought. Um, let's see. I think that's kind of it for housekeeping. Um, like right now, I do have a couple of slots for next week open. So right now, if you put in requests, they'll get up pretty quickly. A lot of my topics, to be honest with you, are kind of my own personal interest, something that I think is interesting, something that I think will be unique. In fact, the next video that I'm going to record actually comes from a viewer suggestion, which sort of started out as a joke. At least I think they were making a joke. But I did a video about Roman concrete this week. And you know what? Let's switch over to that. We're actually gonna let's kind of play with this. Wait, no, that's not what I wanted. Nope, that's not what I wanted either. There we go. All right. So I did a video about Roman concrete. Which sort of kind of started as like, just I was doing a video for my other channel, and the and somebody had mentioned, they're like, oh well, we don't know how Roman concrete is made anymore. I'm like, no way that that's true. you know um like between, chemistry and all that kind of stuff, we have to have figured it out by now. Anyways, so I decided that I would read the Roman concrete video. And one of the things that it was talking about that I thought was really interesting, because they talk about how like Roman concrete essentially can heal itself. Well, one of the reasons is, where was it? Okay. Right here. Research in 2023 found that lime clasts, previously considered a sign of poor aggregation technique, react with water seeping into any cracks. This produces reactive calcium, which allows new calcium carbonate crystals to form and reseal the cracks. These lime clasts have a brittle structure that was most likely created in a hot mixing technique with quicklime rather than traditional slaked lime, causing cracks to preferentially move through the lime class, thus potentially playing a critical role in the self-healing maximum or mechanism. So basically, because the calcium would react with water, essentially dissolve, and then as the water evaporates, the crystals would reform. That's how we end up with, you know, with self-healing concrete. I mean, you look at the Roman structures that have been around for now a couple of thousand years, and they're still standing and they're still working. A lot of that comes down to the Roman concrete. Well, so there was a suggestion by one of the viewers to actually take a look at, or to because I've been doing the teams of the National Football League, and so he suggested that I go through the periodic table, start with hydrogen, and and then work my way through all of the different elements. So, like I said, I think it was sort of suggested as a joke, but I'm like, huh, I wonder. And so I went to look at the entry for hydrogen. Now, if you take a look right here, so that's the little slider bar. I keep the thing pretty well magnified. Um, Usually about like 175%, so it's mostly readable on screen. I get too large, then you end up with like just disasters with some of the layout. But with needless to say, even at 200% scaling, um, actually, I guess the 200% scaling would make this much smaller. But regardless, the scroll bar is tiny, and so this is going to be an absolutely huge article to read. But I'm like, how is this so large? And so like you go through and talks about what it is, how it's used, like theories about where it came from, and or how it's produced, blah blah blah, like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And but then it gets through like how it was discovered, and all sorts of things, and it's just like, this is you know, absolutely fascinating. And so it's like, you know what? This actually might be a whole lot of fun. So anyway, so starting this week, it'll actually come out on Thursday. I'm gonna start that series. Now, obviously, that's gonna be I'm not gonna like overload the um I'm not gonna overload the 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 feed with just like the next 100 days of the periodic table. I think I would lose probably most of my subscribers. um so but for right now, I'll mix it in like I've been doing with the football teams. I'll do one a week. Actually, football is planned right now to end towards the end of March. And oh, no, mid-April. Um but then but starting in March, I'm going to start on teams of Major League Baseball. So, again, just doing one a week. I think it kind of mixes it up, and I think we can have some fun with it. So, anyways, yeah, exactly, Grumpy. I think you're right. One element per week is more than enough. There does come a point where it just stops being interesting. So, give it time, give a week between, and it should be fine. Let's see here. Oh, I guess I should. Sorry, I didn't think about this. Dun, dun, dun. There we go. Anyways, so that's kind of what's been going on there. Let's see. So I guess we should review like the articles that we read this week. So let's see. All right. So we already talked about Roman concrete, which again, that was fascinating. All right, I gave you a preview of what's coming up next week with hydrogen. So let's see here. All right, so this one was actually kind of fun. So the Armenian Apostolic Church. So I've already mentioned that, like, I'm Mormon, and I like looking at some of the articles that are related to my history. But because of that, one of the viewers actually asked that I take a look at the Armenian Apostolic Church, which I had honestly never heard of. That is, I mean, obviously that's on me. And anyways, but so like looking into just its history and how it was started and how it progressed and evolved around, really, really cool. One of the things that, where was it? There was a comment made where, like, I want to, maybe it was under jurisdiction, but basically it was actually I think this might be it down here. Oh yeah, right here. According to a 2018 survey by the Pew Research Center in Armenia, 82% of respondents say it is very or somewhat important to be a Christian to be truly Armenian. And I no, right here. This was the one. The Armenian Apostolic Church is, quote, seen by many as the custodian of Armenian national identity, unquote. Quote, beyond its role as a religious institution, the Apostolic Church has traditionally been seen as the foundational core in the development of the Armenian national identity as God's uniquely chosen people. And I thought, like I was honestly kind of shocked about that. Not that I think, not that I'm trying to like cast aspersions or it's like, my faith is correct, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm not trying to do that. But you typically don't see those kinds of statements from different sects of Christianity. And so I thought that was really, really fascinating. But it is one of those things where, like, you can understand it, like, like what kind of things people latch onto that they consider important to their society, to their culture. So not trying to cast aspersions for anyone making these statements. I just thought they were really, really interesting. Actually, one of the things that I liked most about it was when I'd finally posted it. And let's see. Actually, I want to reply to Grumpy real quick. It says there can be an undercurrent of it, but it's rarely explicitly stated like that. Oh, okay. I'm not. I absolutely know that it that it's that it there can be an undercurrent, and sometimes people state it bluntly. But again, it just wasn't something that I am used to, especially one where it's more closely tied to like a specific region or country or people like that. Um, you know, like that's where I thought it was. Yeah. So Grumpy, my reaction was similar to yours when I heard you read it. So okay. Oh God. Okay. Your reaction was similar to mine. Okay. I'm following you, Grumpy. Uh yeah, so it was anyways, it was just I just found it fascinating. But yeah, so then the viewer who had suggested it actually put in the comments and I thought this was absolutely, fantastic and true, but he's like, Roman Catholics, we did it first. Coptics, nope, afraid not, champ. Armenian Orthodox, absolutely not. Antiochian Orthodox, no, just no. Eastern Orthodox excommunicates papists harder. The relationship between the early wings of the church is fascinating. Some of the early heresies are wild. Honestly, it gets wilder as time goes on. The heresies get stranger and stranger. The stories of these churches are basically critical to understanding the last 1700 years of Western civilization. And I agree with that absolutely 100%. So it was yeah, it was anyways, regardless, I think I grew a little bit by reading it and learning a little bit more. And I love understanding more about people and where they come from and you know things like that. So this one was a great. I highly recommend that you go give this video a listen. Um, I will admit this one was probably my absolute worst for pronunciation. I do my best to say something the way I think it should be said. I don't read these articles ahead of time and then come back and read them again. So I'm literally reading them for the first time. And so then I don't go research the names and how to pronounce them, things like that. So I just do my best. But this one beat the living tar out of me. Like especially like right in through here where it's talking about like the different prelacies and dioceses and the the eparchies. I don't anyways, it was like I apologize to every Armenian out there for how I butchered to how you say anything. It was such a mess. Oh my gosh, it was a mess, but it was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed reading that one. Um, let's see. There's a game where you play the various factions of the early church as you determine what the creed will be exactly. Some of the ideas were kind of crazy. Yes. Yes, indeed. Um, I haven't gotten much French. I've gotten a lot more Portuguese, but I already speak Portuguese, so I'm doing okay there. Um, French, I think I've heard enough that I can sort of fake it, but I don't don't quote me on it. I don't. I yeah. Anyways, I hit stuff like I can do German because I've taken German. I've done German on Duolingo. Um, but yeah, it's um I try my best, but I hit some and I'm just like I don't know. It's a mess, but regardless, it's fun. Um all right. So that was Friday. Roman concrete was Thursday. So then Wednesday we looked at Moore's law. This came up. I mentioned it at the beginning of the video. Because of my gaming channel. Um, it came up because I was reading a role playing game that came out in 1997, Alternity, which I did a video about a few weeks ago. And basically it started talking about computers, and then I started thinking about how like it even mentions Moore's law and the development and the the improvement of processors and things like that. And so it's like, you know what? Let's go read Moore's law. So that's actually where this one came from. Um, what I thought was interesting is the fact, like, it even says right here, really early on in the article, and it breaks it down a little bit more later on. But in September 22, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang considered Moore's law dead, while Intel's then CEO Pat Gelsinger had the opposite view. Uh, sorry, hiccups. So, um, they've they actually have said that it has slowed, but even what I thought was interesting is, so we call it Moore's law, but in reality, even Moore didn't consider it a law. He just like, yeah, this is a trend and it'll probably, like end at some point. Um and and so uh he actually just said, "Hey, this is kind of just an observation that I've got." But it kind of proved more or less correct, and so that's why they started calling it the Moore's law. Now, originally it was going like every 18 months, and then eventually it slowed down to about every 2 years. And I think right now they're saying it's about every 3, but a lot of the problem that they're running into is just the smaller they make it, electricity just stops cooperating. And so that's where they're struggling right now. But even then, part of the reason that they're slowing is they're just like, well, if we expand out and look at what the functions are doing, as opposed to just cramming more transistors in, um, you know, like they're finding better performance that way by being able to specialize the circuits, it sounds like, as opposed to focusing them. Grumpy says you could do another series about various laws like that: Sturgeon's law, Clark's law, Finagle's law. I could. For those, honestly, drop it in the comments. Because I like Moore's law kind of hit me as like, oh, I am curious about this. So sometimes I will be honest, I need a little bit of a push to look into something if I don't already know about it. And even then, I still have things that I already know about, but I don't think of it because my ADHD brain just kind of scatters all over the place. So, so yeah, that's why comments are absolutely like gold for this project. Because I want to know what the audience really wants to know about. Right now, I'm just throwing out things that I find interesting. But if it's something that is coming from the audience, hopefully that means there's a bit more interest and a bit more uptake in it. But hopefully what I find interesting, you all are. I mean, the trend line is going well. I just need it. I would just like it to be a little better, but there's probably a lot of work I could do on the back end, as far as like tags and organization and things like that. So, um, let's see. I'm trying to come up with ideas for multiple videos rather than a single one. That's my approach for my channel. No, and that's fine. In this particular case, because again, it's Wikipedia articles. So like I'm doing the teams of the NFL. Well, but I don't really want it to be a football channel. I could, but I think a Wikipedia channel just reading different articles related to football would just attract a very narrow subset that might not necessarily be interested in. So I'll be honest, I'm casting the net wide in this particular case as opposed to narrow. So that's why I don't mind branching out and getting a bunch of different topics. But again, if you throw in comments, comments take priority on stuff. Even like unless I really really want to do something, I've bumped stuff for comments before, and like literally redone my schedule. So, trust me, it helps. All right, so, anyways, overall, Moore's Law really really interesting. You know, I definitely recommend taking a look at it, because it's I don't know. Art literally it is pushed and changed how we have like literally how our society has kind of evolved and developed. Because this push for increasing what computers and what circuits can do. Um, so like where was it? Yeah, so major enabling factors, like literally like this kind of breaks down how the chip process just expanded and grew. So anyways, there's tons of information in here. Again, this is another one of those articles with the super tiny scroll bar. Um, but then different um adaptations, what people were able to do. Um, yeah, there's all sorts of crazy stuff in there. All right, so that's Moore's Law. Let's see. What did we do that? Okay. Before that one, Thomas L. Kane, United States Union Army General. Now, this is another one of those Mormon articles. But I found out about this guy from I don't even think it was from the Utah War article. I'd found because I'd had it on the schedule at the same time as the Utah War. Um, I actually think I might have found him first, and basically I held it off until last week because it was his birthday. So what a perfect time. This guy was super interesting. So yeah, an American attorney, abolitionist, philanthropist, and military officer who was influential in the Western migration of the Latter-day Saint movement and served as a Union Army colonel and general of volunteers in the American Civil War. Um, he received a brevet promotion to major general for gallantry at the Battle of Gettysburg. Um, he was responsible for mediating between the U.S. government and the Mormons in Utah. Actually, the thing that I thought most interesting about that, and I would still recommend go back and check out the video on the Utah War. But like the story that I always heard at church was just about, oh, this thing happened and then it stopped. But there was never a whole lot of background given. But seeing what this guy did, like, so he was sent by James Buchanan to mediate. And so he travels from like, I think it was Pennsylvania where he was at originally, but travels from Pennsylvania to Panama, crosses Panama, goes up to essentially like San Diego, goes up the Colorado River to and then eventually goes up to Salt Lake that way. So just like essentially sneaks into Utah, managed to get there, and then negotiate, Brigham Young, standing down and, acceding to the authority of the federal government, things like that. So super, super interesting. But then, actually, oh, you know what? This is another good point. So the Mormon Battalion, Um, so you're saying an Easterner arrived from the yes, yes, I am. More the South, but yeah, I get what you're saying. I know that's a reference to something. I don't know the exact reference. Um, but anyway, still pretty good. Um, so the Mormon Battalion is its own fascinating story, which maybe I should read. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to read that one at some point. I'll put that off a little while though. But basically, essentially he was the one that you know negotiated to get the government essentially to get the government to help the Mormons move west by getting the 500 men to serve in the Mexican American War. I did think it was interesting that he didn't. I when I started reading this, I kind of assumed that he would have led the unit, which would have been even more interesting, but he didn't. So not an issue. But where was it? So yeah, so then after all that, he went and was involved in the Civil War. All right. Have a great night, Grumpy. Thanks for hanging out with me. It was fun. All right. So right here, Kane has been described as a visionary of infantry tactics. He taught his men what would become known as skirmisher tactics. They learned to scatter under fire and to make use of whatever cover the ground offered, and to fire only when they could see their targets. He stressed individual responsibility in his soldiers, a contradiction to the military thinking of the time. He held target practice, which was also an innovative idea, and drilled them in long range firing, developing his men into fine sharpshooters. So essentially, he took a unit that, and instead of just, like following the traditional doctrine, I mean, one could say that he was essentially responsible for, for how kind of the modern U.S. military works. Obviously, it wouldn't be adopted for a while, but I mean, this is a major shift. It's not ranks. It's not, all right, let's all stand up together and let's all get shot together. But actually teaching them, small unit tactics and hide and take cover and, that kind of stuff. Just absolutely, absolutely fascinating. I'm probably wrong on all this. Some military historian will probably see that and tell me that I'm an idiot, but it's the way that I see it. So then another thing that was fun, so the unit was called the Bucktails. And right here is the regiment was forming. One recruit ornamented his hat with a tail from a deer's carcass that he'd found in a butcher's shop. Other men in the regiment liked this decoration and copied him, causing the regiment to be known as the Bucktails. Weird things that that seem to happen in the military, because let's be honest, you put a bunch of dudes together and let them be dudes, and boom, you've got Bucktails. Done. I think that's great. Let's see. But yeah, so other than that, right here, so after the Civil War, Kane and his wife moved to the frontier in western Pennsylvania, eventually owning over 100,000 acres of timberland on which oil and gas were later discovered. Kane, whose father had been the attorney who incorporated the Pennsylvania Railroad, laid out railroad routes in that area and located the low summit over which the Philadelphia and Erie Railroad crossed the Alleghenies. He was involved in the founding of the community of Kane, Pennsylvania. Acted as the director of Sunbury and Erie Railroad. He had served as Secretary of the United States Legation in Paris in 1842 to 1843. He was the first president of the Board of State Charities and a member of the American Philosophical, American Geographical, and Pennsylvania Historical Societies. He was a Freemason. His later years were spent in charitable work and writing. Like fantastic. This I think is cool. The Thomas L. Kane Memorial Chapel. So it says the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints maintains as a historic site the Thomas L. Kane Memorial Chapel in Kane, Pennsylvania, in recognition of Kane's friendship and assistance. But later on, okay, yeah, no, in the actual article about it. So essentially, it was a Presbyterian church. I'm not sure. So on August 1st, 2014, the church donated the church to the Kane Historic Preservation Society as part of the celebration of the 150th anniversary of the founding of Kane. Okay. So my question is it still a church? Or so anyways, here, let's all right. So this is from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints website. A week-long celebration marking the 150th anniversary of the founding of the town of Kane in Northwest Pennsylvania was capped off by a ceremonial transfer of the historic Kane Memorial Chapel from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to the Kane Historic Preservation Society. Matthew J. Grove, Director of Publications in the Church History Department and author of the award-winning biography Liberty to the Downtrodden, Thomas L. Kane, Romantic Reformer, represented the church in a special ceremony held at the chapel on Friday, 1 August. The Honorable J.M. Cleland, a senior judge on the McKean County Court of Common Pleas and a native of Kane, accepted the building donation on behalf of the Historic Society. Judge Cleland expressed gratitude to the church for its generous donation to the community, noting the strong ties between Kane and the church, which began with the town's founder, Thomas L. Kane. While Thomas Kane never accepted Mormon theology, he defended their religious freedom, Judge Cleland said. We are grateful to the Kane Preservation Society for its willingness to receive the chapel and continue to care for it. Okay, Richard Bly, chairman of the Kane Historic Preservation Society, said, quote, the chapel was in serious disrepair and might not be here today if the church had not purchased it. The church renovated the building in 1970. In my opinion, said Bly, it is the most historic structure in Kane. This is truly a gift and an honor to be the caregiver of the property. All right, so it doesn't say anything about what it is currently used for. That's a little frustrating. You know what? Let's look real quick. I mean, there's a Wikipedia for it. Kane Historic Preservation Society, just talking in general. All right, so that's not telling me anything. I don't know. I don't know what it's being used for at this point, which is a little disappointing. Probably should do some more research on it, but we'll figure it out at some point. All right. So then on Monday, we talked about the Denver Broncos. All right. Why did we talk about the Denver Broncos? Well, they were in the playoffs. I was really bad. I should have been paying attention to what teams were in the playoffs. I didn't, but here we are. Anyways, again, these I'm actually kind of looking at the football ones more as like history lessons. A lot of these teams, we're talking they're 50, 60, some of them over 100 years old. And so just seeing some of the history and how the teams have evolved, how maybe the team started under the AFL and had fantastic record, but then come into more modern days and then they have a horrible record and then they came back. Anyways, just seeing the history is kind of interesting. I do also think it's kind of funny because history, Bob Howsam, Gerald Phillips era, 1960 to 1980. So they'll do that and it's like, okay, 3 or 4 paragraphs about 20 years. And then, Edgar Kaiser, Pat Bolin area, 1981 to 2022. And you'll get like 10 paragraphs or something. And then suddenly, like in the more recent years, it's like every year somebody will go in and write a paragraph about what happened that year. Um, but they'll just so it just like stretches out that history as we get a lot closer, which I think is kind of funny. Um, anyways, so just really interesting. It's another football team. I don't remember anything specific from this one. I'm sorry, but uh I do remember them going to the Super Bowl one year. Um, when was it? Because I remember because so in my Sunday school class, um, the the teacher was trying to teach us about journaling, and I think this might have been it. Nope, that was too early. Oh no, because that would have been wins. Um, anyways, so I didn't really follow football, but a kid in class did, and he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna like," and she gave us like construction paper to make little journals out of. And one of the kids in class was like, "Oh, I'm gonna, put Denver Broncos stuff on us." I'm like, "I'm gonna do that too." Um, and so uh I remember that being uh a big thing when I was a kid. Let's see. Okay, so it had to have been like 86 or 87. Because yeah, I would have been like 10 or 11 at the time. Um, so yeah, one of those 2 years. So I absolutely remember that about the Denver Broncos, but that's kind of the extent of it. Um, but yeah, just I again, I've been having a lot of fun reading the football videos. So there's that. All right, so let's look at our fiction ones. All right, so we've got Sarna.net, Clan Star Adder. All right, so this was the Battletech clan that we looked at. So, kind of to explain what I've been doing with Battletech, I started with basically I'm looking at the major factions. And technically at this point I'm into really, really minor factions. Um, the major factions starting with the 5 houses of the inner sphere. And then I went into the 20 clans uh of Nicholas Kerensky. So so that's kind of been my progress. I'm working my way through the 20 clans, which I've got just a few left. Um, looks like so Clan Widowmaker is coming up this week, Clan Mongoose the week after, Clan Wolverine the week after that. And then I'm going to do 2 extras. I'm going to do Clan Wolf in Exile because that's almost a different clan. And then I'm also going to do Clan Stone Lion, which is the only new clan that was ever created, because I don't know much about it. But after that, we're then going to kind of approach it like the way I've been doing Warhammer 40,000. With Warhammer 40,000, I started with the 18 Primarchs, and then I've started just kind of doing various different articles. And so we'll do the same thing with BattleTech. There are all sorts of things to look at. Operation Bulldog, Task Force Serpent, the Fourth Succession War, the marriage of Hans and Melissa, Hans Davian and Melissa Steiner, all sorts of things like that we can look at. But this has been fun. The Star Adders, I was actually kind of surprised at. They've got a really, really good history. They're actually a fair, like at least the way they're written, they're a fairly strong faction. But because they weren't one of the invading clans, they're almost unheard of. That's one thing that is frustrating about BattleTech. Like they make a big deal about these 20 clans to get started, obviously there's only so much writing you can do, but you know, in 30 something years, like if it's not Jade Falcons, Wolves, Ghost Bears, or Jaguars, for all intents and purposes, they don't talk about those other factions. So anyway, so this one was actually really good to read about. I like the fact that there's a bit more excitement and interest or than you necessarily think of. Um Anyways, it was this one was probably one of my more favorites to read in quite a while. So that's Clan Staradder. And then uh we had Necromunda Planet. I think I got that URL right. Yeah, I did. Good job. All right. So why did I pick Necromunda the Planet? Because I wanted to. So Necromunda is interesting. It's got a classic game that's been around. Oof, when did Necromunda come out? Okay, 1995. Okay, so yeah, so we're about 30 years into the original Necromunda. Or since the original Necromunda came out. They obviously re-released it about 8 years ago for the current edition. I have almost all of the books for it. And anyways, so I thought it would be fun to actually take a look at Necromunda itself. And just the depth that this article went into was fantastic, and I still think that there was a bunch of stuff left out. Um, like this Piscian Xenos, um, this like they don't get a whole lot um of background. Maybe it's actually maybe that's why House Delac looks so weird, because I mean, these kind of look like fishmen. Maybe they are. I don't know. I don't know, but it's absolutely nuts, and I think they did it really really well. I like how it talked about the geography. Basically, like it's a dead planet. Um, and the fact that it still supports life, I actually think is amazing the way that they describe it. Um, but it really does just kind of like dive in and let you know about this harsh world that game is based off of. Like here's a map for it. Like originally the planet was supposed to be covered in a giant ocean, and so just very very little land mass. You can tell that the oceans are just gone. Um Replaced by, these hives and um just fields and fields of ash instead of even sand. Um, but then just the breakdown of um, the gangs and how they interact. Actually, one thing that I thought was real interesting. Where was it? Basically, it talked about how essentially the leaders of Necromunda essentially know that there's going to be war. And so essentially the gang wars exist because essentially it allows the planet to kind of stabilize itself. And as long as the production quotas are being met, you know what? Gang war all you want. And so really, really interesting. Not that that's how I'd want to live, but just really, really a fascinating story, and like kind of explains why the game was developed the way it is, and just really plays into that grim dark aspect of the Warhammer setting. So really, really fun. I really enjoyed this one. I'd absolutely recommend that you go check this out. Um so let's see. So basically, that's what we covered this week. We did have one current event article, which was Grumpy actually asked me to take a look at the January 1998 North American ice storm. Um, which that was actually interesting as well, because just some of the things that evolved off of that, studies that they did, as far as how did the stress on moms at the time affect kids. Basically it was like they were able to start like a 20-year study off of it, so super super interesting. So all right, with that said, um we've gone for about an hour. Right now, that's what we're kind of planning, as we get additional, people who are viewing and commenting and sparking discussions. Maybe we'll go for a little bit longer, but for right now, I'm trying to keep these relatively short, because I also don't want the wife to think that I'm abandoning her on Sunday afternoon. So, with that said, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had some fun today. Grumpy, if you came back and watched the end, thanks so much for hanging out. Thanks for your comments and your questions. I absolutely appreciated them. But with that said, folks, don't forget, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you enjoy this, and as always, drop a comment down below. Let me know about something that you'd like to know a little bit more about. Um, I'm enjoying doing these. That's why I've made sure to get a video out every single day since September 1st. So let me know what you want to hear about, and we'll get that into the comment, or we'll get that into the queue moving forward. So thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it, and we will talk to you next time. Bye, everybody.